All right. I'm Corinne Karen. I'm here today with lawyer Ed Nitkewicz. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
One of our interesting people that we shoot every Friday here at the Sanders firm. And today we're talking about product liability. So I wanted to chat with Ed about injuries associated with products, and if you're working somewhere and you're injured while using a product, what happens in those cases. So one of the questions that we had from a viewer was when a product maker or seller, when can a product maker or seller be liable for injuries?
If a product is either designed defectively or manufactured defectively, meaning it's designed in such a way that it's just unreasonably dangerous, even if the manufacturer is completely careful about designing it, they can be responsible if it's dangerous and causes injury. It's called strict liability.
Okay.
Sometimes manufacturers design a safe product, but during the phase when it's being constructed or manufactured,
Yeah.
there's a defect in the manufacturing process. So the first 29 have been made safely, but there's a defect in the manufacture with this particular product,
Yeah.
and that causes somebody to be injured. In those instances, you can hold them liable when you're injured.
Really?
Yeah.
So you come up with a cool product and you think it's the greatest thing in the world, and people are using it for years, and someone gets hurt and it's an accident. What is the
The liability, yeah. I mean, you can design a product and manufacture a product and sell a product and put it into what we call the stream of commerce,
yeah,
and not hear from it again for quite some time.
Yeah.
And then after a certain period of time, you can find that there are some defects that are causing injuries.
right,
We see that a lot in cases where drugs are manufactured. People use particular drugs for a while, and then
Sure.
the pharmaceutical companies have put it into the stream of commerce.
sure.
Suddenly, after a period of time, users of that drug are finding that there are defects that are causing injuries beyond the scope of the use.
Okay, so wait a minute. On those commercials where it says you're going to have all of these injuries that result from using their drug, is that what you're talking about?
Well, when drug manufacturers promote a drug, they have to also include in their marketing what the risks associated are with them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that just because you place a risk on your ad that
Sure.
means it's reasonable. The drug has to still be safely designed.
Okay, so if they list those, does that protect them
Not
from being
always.
sued?
Not always.
No.
No,
So
not
if it
always.
says this may cause cancer and you get cancer, are you liable?
If the drug is determined to be defective, if it's designed effectively,
Okay.
then yeah, you could very well be. And we handle cases not just involving drugs, but products, for
Right.
example. A product could be safe. A product could be dangerous, but still be safe. So, for example, a saw.
Right.
Use a table saw.
Right.
Table saws are designed to cut through wood. They
Right.
certainly could cut through a hand.
Yes.
But there are guards, there are protections or protective devices to keep somebody who's working on a job site from losing their hand or finger.
Right. Sure.
So a dangerous product may not necessarily be designed dangerously.
The user.
That's right.
So we also had a question, and Kat, you'll let us know if you have any questions live. Another question we had of a worker in a factory, and he was injured using a product and wants to know if he can bring a claim.
It's interesting because people who are injured on the job sometimes they understand that there's workers' compensation insurance to protect them and provide coverage for their health care. But there's also what they call another claim, a third-party claim, a
Right.
claim that can exist if they are injured while using a product that is defective. So, for example, if they're working in a factory and they're cutting something and a table saw is dangerous or defective, or some piece of equipment that they're using is dangerous, defective in its design or manufacture, you can have a separate action against the manufacturer, designer, or seller of that product. So it's important when you're injured on a job, when you're injured using a product. If
Right.
you think there's a defect,
Right.
come see us. Let us know. We'll take a look at
At the
it.
Sanders firm.
At the Sanders Law Firm.
So you could actually have then a claim against the business owner and the product.
Well, the claim, if you're working for a business and you're injured on the job while working for that business, then
Right.
you would have what we call a workers'
It's
compensation claim.
Mm-hmm.
In the traditional tort system, you may very well also have a claim against the designer of the product, the manufacturer of the product, even the seller of the product, anyone who's involved in placing that product in what we call the stream of commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And again, depending upon how dangerous a design, dangerous the product it is,
Right.
that determines whether or not you truly have a claim to bring.
Very interesting. So, speaking of interesting, tell us a little bit about some of the cool cases that you have encountered during your time.
Well, we've had some interesting cases because sometimes we have been involved in cases involving, for example,
I'm getting
recently-
some gun action there, so.
Oh, I know that. That's what I was going. So for instance, we've had a case recently which involved a man who was using a rifle. And
Okay.
It was an old school muzzle loading rifle.
Right.
And when he was using the rifle and pulled the trigger, the interior portion of the gun came back and struck him right under the eye.
Wow.
Fortunately, under the eye.
Yeah.
But what was most interesting about that case as it was being litigated was that there was a recall notice on the gun. And you interestingly enough, brought up the fact that a product could be in a stream of commerce, and years later it can
Right.
cause damage. That's a great case scenario to point out to people. So, for example, this gun that may have been manufactured quite some time before,
Right.
may have been sold quite some time before, and may have actually been transferred from family member to neighbor
Right.
to cause damage because of what we allege to
Wow.
be a design defect,
Wow.
and perhaps even a manufacturing defect in certain cases. That was the basis of our claim. So.
And what was the result? Were you allowed
Well,
to say?
I'm not. No,
Okay.
the case was resolved, and there
Okay.
is a confidentiality agreement,
Okay.
which I certainly would never undermine. But it was the claims that were made are typical to what you see in product liability cases.
Wow.
So time doesn't bar you.
Yeah, and almost, for a lot of people, it's an American dream to come up with something very interesting and invent something.
Sure.
And then it makes you think that you maybe better think twice about what you're bringing out
Oh.
and selling to the public.
Well, and product liability law ensures that when you do so,
Mm-hmm.
you design things that are safe.
Mm-hmm.
You design things that are safe, and,
Sure.
and certainly before you introduce them into the market, we make sure that we, as attorneys who represent people who are injured, want to make sure they're safe.
Yeah.
I always like to tell the story when people walk around the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
How now there's this patio top above where you
Yeah.
walk downstairs, and that's because people used to drop quarters from the top of pennies from the top of the Empire State Building.
Mm-hmm.
Attorneys who represented people who are injured, kind of by bringing lawsuits, by continuously pressing for safety.
Mm-hmm.
The Empire
Yeah.
State Building is now a safer place, so too are products being
Wonderful.
designed safer.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining me today,
Thank you
Ed.
for having
And
me.
thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kat, for your first recording on Periscope. Let's see if you can end the broadcast.
Thank you.
Maybe.